Remember, when we use probes and things, the reason we use those is so that we can get the most accurate evidence or information.
Welcome to another episode of UEN's PDTV. Today, we have traveled to Uintah River High School on the Ute Indian Tribe's Uintah and Ouray reservation. We're here to learn how science teacher Mike engages his students in hands-on, real-world projects with a little help from some scientific probes.
So I've been teaching for 5 years. This will be my 5th year. The first 4 years I taught special education at Uintah School District, and I've taught every grade from kindergarten to 12th. This is my first year in science. This particular school has 80 students enrolled. Most of them have come over from Eagle View Elementary. So I think that goes from kindergarten to the 8th grade, and then they start here at 9th grade. It's kind of like an RTI school, and so we're kind of catching up in reading and math mostly, and we do have a high graduation rate, which is good.
EdTech Competency 3E focuses on facilitating learning through critical thinking. Throughout this episode, we'll see how Mike has partnered with his Regional Educational Service Center to enhance the project-based learning experiences he has designed for his students. Projects that engage them in computational thinking and tie directly to the Ute tribe's stewardship over the plants, animals, minerals, and water in the more than 4.5 million acres that make up their reservation. Science seems like it's the perfect type of class to engage students in hands-on critical thinking activities. How do you try to accomplish that with your students?
I do utilize a lot of technology. Obviously, we can't look at a cell and hold it in front of us, and so we have to go online and look at different models and things like that. But mostly, I try to get the students to recognize patterns and how they relate to what they're seeing around them. And we always start our lesson with a phenomenon. So for example, we want to go out and look at why something is happening the way it's happening, and then try to understand that scientifically. Most of it is just going out, collecting evidence, and letting the students observe that evidence and try to come up with their own conclusions of what they think is going on and how that phenomenon is happening.
You also incorporate computational thinking into your science lessons. I know you were telling me about some of the ways you've been focusing on data and graphing. Tell me a little bit more about what you've been doing.
A lot of our science concepts that we try to teach the students have a certain goal in the standard. And so we may have design a model or scale and proportion, things like that, based in the standard. And so we use that standard to kind of guide the lesson and where it's supposed to go. And then we use cross-cutting concepts as well. And those kind of go along with the standard. And so when we combine those two together, we can take a lesson in any direction that we need to help them understand. And those cross-cutting concepts are very important for that, because they exist in pretty much all science that we do. And so we can kind of pick and choose what we need to do to help the students understand the basic goal of the standard.
Well, today we got to see you trying out for the first time, I believe, some scientific probes to help with this whole hands-on project-based learning experience. Tell me, what were the probes? What did you use them for?
So we had a temperature probe for earth science, and it measures the temperatures of different objects. And one of the probes we used to measure the temperature of water so that we could understand ocean currents and how they work. And we also talked about the moon and the earth and how the moon pulls the earth towards it with gravity and changes the shape of the earth. And so that affects the temperature of the ocean currents. And so we did a little experiment with the probes to kind of mimic the earth, and we put pressure and motion on it to test the temperature to see if that temperature changed inside the ball that we used. And so the students were able to visually see that change in temperature and record it and have data and evidence to prove that, yes, the moon does affect the earth and how it changes the currents.
We're learning about the Coriolis currents. It's where you can see like how all the convection waves are, like the speed and the temperatures. So you just gotta put the ball in here and like kind of like do this and like move it around to see like how like it's affecting the earth. And then like once you get enough information, then you could stop your table.
And then for biology, we tried a pH probe to test the acidity levels of apples and different apples, because we're learning about the genetics of how apples are produced and grown, and how GMOs affect our economy and things like that. And farmers use genetic engineering in order to sell their apples and things. And so we were able to test the pH of the apples to see if that had a difference in taste.
I love that the use of the probe in the particular experiments you did today were coming from what you've already been studying, you know, genetics and ocean currents and the gravitational pull of the moon. So it led right into the projects. I also love that you're directing the students right to real world and even career applications of the results of the experiments. It's got to make it a lot more meaningful to them.
I hope so. At least to get them out there to see that there's more to life that they may not pay attention to, that science is all around them and they're gonna find it wherever they go. So
yeah,
I think that's important for them to learn.
So how did you learn about the probes? How did you get them here at your school?
Jason is a person that comes out from, I believe, the state. Like
yeah, the Regional Service Center.
Okay. And he has all these different resources that he has available for us to use. And he came out one day and said, oh, I've got these probes, and asked if I would like to use them. And so I said, sure, we'll try them and see what we can do with them. And we've been testing them out and playing with them a little bit. And they've been very helpful in these last couple of lessons to kind of show the students that there is data that we can collect, and this is how we would do it if it was our profession and things like that. And it just kind of gives them a hands-on experience that they can connect with the lesson that we're providing. And so I think that was very good for the students to see.
And it must be nice to know that someone like Jason can come and say, these exist, this is how you use them.
Yeah, it's a nice resource to have, because he has a lot more information about what's available and things. So it's been really nice to work with him and get some of that extra that we don't actually have here, that we could bring in and help facilitate the lesson a little better.
So again, I love seeing how this project-based learning approach is really giving students hands-on experiences and real-world connections to things that matter to them. How is this particularly meaningful to the students as members of this tribe?
So resources and land management is really important to a reservation, and I think a lot of these students have families or may grow up to be in charge of this reservation, and it's important for them to understand scientifically what resources they have and how to manage them. So for example, the wildlife in the area, they have certain hunting rights that they have to worry about, and the population of those animals in the ecosystem. And understanding those concepts is going to help them in order to keep this tribe working properly, and so that it's not wasted resources or losing money or things like that. And so that environmental planning is important, and being able to understand the science behind it is going to be very important for them to have in the future. And I also want to try to keep some of their culture. For example, this assignment we did in chemistry, I want them to understand how the culture believes the elements exist, and spiritually how they feel about those elements in their folklore and things like that, and try to tie that into what we know now about those elements in chemistry.
Yeah, really neat connections. First, between different curriculum areas, you know, kind of the business management, even political side of things tied into the science and how they work together to help them be stewards of the land. And then also, as you said, that tie to their beliefs, to their ancestry. And I love that you're talking about how they feel about the science they're learning and the implications on their future lives, because I don't think we always think about science and feelings.
Yeah.
So, but when you're working with a group of people who have strong emotional and spiritual ties to the land, and then you're teaching them about chemistry and earth and space science, that makes sense.
Yeah, and I'm hoping they can tie in how they feel with what we know now, and understand that folklore is important, but it's really because they didn't understand what they were seeing in those phenomenons. And so if we can tie in what we know now with the science, and then still have that cultural background involved, I think that's really important for them to keep, so that they can understand where they come from and how important that evidence is to find in order to prove your science, to show that that's why it works the way it does.
Well, thank you so much for sharing what you've been doing with your students. Thank you for teaching science. What an adventure to start that this year.
Yeah.
And we've really enjoyed getting to know you and your students.
Well, thank you.
Now that you have seen Mike and his students in action, consider how you can implement EdTech Competency 3E in your teaching as well. Start with a willingness to try new things in your classroom. In addition to LEA support, remember that UEN can help you implement new techniques and tools as well. And in rural areas of the state, you have access to support from your regional service centers. The regional service centers were established to support 26 rural school districts in 4 regions of the state. So find your local service center and reach out. In order to implement project-based learning in your classroom, you need to understand the hallmarks of PBL. It starts with identifying real-world problems and scenarios that can engage your students in deep learning. It's even better if students can choose their own projects and explore things that are meaningful in their lives and can benefit their future careers. Project-based learning also involves incorporating different subject areas into the same project. So you may explore politics, mathematics, and science all within the same project. Conducting research is also a big part of PBL. And once the research has been concluded, students can present possible solutions to the problems they explored. In order to incorporate computational thinking into your classroom, again, you need to understand the hallmarks of that kind of project-based learning. Computational thinking learning experiences are also focused on real-world scenarios and problems. But in this case, we focus on data collection and logical thinking to help us find solutions. Once the data has been collected, students can organize it in logical ways and use it to help them make decisions. Finally, for computational thinking, students will create algorithms based on the data they have collected. Creating an algorithm means basically creating rules that either people or computers can follow to help continue to solve problems in the future. Remember that these teaching styles can be used in any content area. Recognizing patterns, generating formulas, and really getting deep understanding of concepts is helpful whether you're teaching algebra or Shakespeare or learning a new language or coding. There are a lot of tools that can help with these processes as well. To get started, you might visit PBL Works, where you can find the steps of project-based learning, as well as a lot of example projects to help you get going. Any of the presentation, research, and collaboration tools that you always use in your classrooms can help with this process as well. For computational thinking specifically, you might explore tools that help with data collection and graphing. These could include probes like you saw in action today, sensors, thermometers, Raspberry Pis, Arduinos. There are a lot of options. Graphing tools like Sheets or Excel can also be very helpful in analyzing data. For even more ideas, resources, strategies, and tools to help you implement this competency, be sure to visit our teacher toolkit at uen.org/PDTV. Thanks for watching UEN's PDTV. To access more professional development resources from UEN and to schedule a training, visit uen.org/development. We'll see you next time.